Welcome to Black Belt Beauty Radio, a podcast fueled by a passion to support your journey in developing your most beautiful and optimal performance in life. Each episode is driven with the intention to elevate your mind. When we elevate our mind, we elevate our life. So get ready. It's time to rise. Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of Black Belt Beauty Radio. I'm really looking forward to diving into today's topic. I want to dive deep into the layers of one of my favorite attributes, and really it's a core value of mine, and that is integrity. Integrity is everything. It is, like I said, it's a core value of mine. It is something that personally matters to me, in terms of how I operate and function in my life, but it's also of equal importance to, the people that I keep closest to me. That's like a trait that lives in each of my very closest individuals. And I want to talk about why this attribute is so important. And I want to actually dive into some of the ways that you can start to fortify and really just expand your levels of integrity. So I thought it would be cool to actually read the definition of integrity. For those of you who don't know, I am a self-acclaimed logophile. What does that mean? Logophile is lover of words. I've been writing my whole life. So I always say, words are an experience, words cast spells. And I love to, even if I know the definition of a word, I love going into the dictionary and just seeing how it's stated in the dictionary. So let me start by reading you the definition of integrity. So there are two definitions for integrity in this dictionary that I looked up. So number one, the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles, moral uprightness. Number two, this one is really special to me. The state of being whole and undivided. Now, for my longtime listeners, you know that, wholeness it's a very important state that I'm always, in everything that I talk about, there's always this direction to bring us into a state of wholeness, right? Because to really live from your most empowered state, you are going to be operating from a place of wholeness where you are secure with your authentic self. You are essentially complete, which does not mean that there isn't space for others to come in and expand you and, add to you. But it's simply saying that as you are, you take full ownership and you feel complete within yourself, And so I love that this definition of integrity also states that it's, it's being in a state of wholeness and, or being whole and undivided. So I want to talk about, why is this so important, right? Some of you may already know this very well. A lot of you may already be operating with strong levels of integrity. But what I want to actually start with is, look, I'm in my fourth decade of life. And when I think back about my life and kind of evaluate how I functioned throughout it, let's focus on my 20s. My 20s, and as a writer my whole life, I have this all in my journal. Integrity was always built within me. Was I always operating at the highest levels of integrity? No. And there's lots of reasons for that. And that's not I'm not judging myself in any mean way. It's just, I'm always in observation of myself because it's important. It's important to witness ourselves and gather information so that we can learn about ourselves and learn about the ways at which we can, make improvements. And, if there's things to pivot and break through or shift from, you're only going to know that information if you're actually witnessing yourself. This is why self-awareness is such an important conversation for me always. It is the greatest agent for change and for growth, right? So when I think about some of the moments in my 20s, where I wasn't operating at, my highest levels of integrity. Again, I can also understand why in those moments. There were several reasons. Maybe I wasn't operating at the highest state of health, meaning like, I'd be up all night, or, I lived in New York City. I used to throw parties for a living. I'm also in Hawaii too. So there was that. Age, related. It was younger, and we could be a little bit more messy in those years, and it's part of the process, right? It's part of how we get to this place within ourselves where we're able to realize what matters to us, like what are our priorities. The important thing to say is that it wasn't that I didn't have integrity. I absolutely did. It was just the standards at which I was holding myself to with this particular attribute were not as consistent or as high at some moments. It wasn't this, decade of being a mess, not painting that picture. If that was the truth, I would just share it. Fuck it. But that's not the case. It was just some moments where I'm like, ooh, you could have fucking done that better there. Or you could have, taken more ownership and self-accountability in that moment. And then all of that relates back to levels of integrity. The cool part is that, that's behind me, right? And I've learned, and, from that decade into, where I am now in my 40s, I'm very proud and confident to say that my integrity levels are at a full-time fucking high. Full-time, meaning full operation. The funny kind of example that I give is even, so cleaning in my home, I don't have to move the furniture every time I vacuum. This might sound OCD, and that's fine if it does, because I don't care, but it's not. It's actually just, it's important to me. It's like this situation where I can see what I'm doing. I'm witnessing my effort, my work, and I don't want to take a shortcut. I don't want to, I don't want to do it half-assed. Why? Because that's an integrity thing. It's the quote, how you do anything is how you do everything. So if I'm going to make the effort to, vacuum my space, well, then I'm going to move the chair too. It might sound like a funny example. It actually is a funny example. However, it's also a very universal one. I know a lot of you are like, shit. I'm not trying to call anybody out. I'm just saying, I'm giving a real life, everyday example of how, even in these smaller moments, how integrity shows up, right? So why is integrity so important? It's massive. Number one, integrity essentially is you living up to your word, right? Your actions and your words are a match. They are in alignment, right? And if those two things are not in alignment, not only, will it cause a disruption in trust to your external relationships, but moreover, it actually prevents you from trusting yourself. Why would you? If you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, okay. And that becomes a very slippery slope, it tends to happen more often than not. So why are you going to trust yourself? You're not going to. And that's a problem, because self-trust is one of the most important attributes that we can, uphold and move through our life with, right? So we might not make that connection that, integrity and self-trust, but it absolutely supports your self-trust, as well as the trust of others. I deeply, deeply value my word. It's connected to my name, right? So if I say I'm going to do something, number one, I'm going to do it because my word matters to me. But number two, because I don't ever want to be flimsy. I don't ever want to be a flake. I always want to stand in my commitments, because that's important to me, right? So it's important to point that out, and really let me tease out the word value there, because your values are, they're so important to how you were moving through your life and how you're essentially creating your life, So integrity is a core value of mine. And what it also does is it keeps a certain standard present in my life that I have to live up to, that I want to live up to. So it's really important, first of all, to know what your core values are, but then to realize that these values, are essentially creating a certain standard that you are living up to. And to me, integrity is such a rich one because in this one attribute, there's so much that lives in it, right? Again, so it supports trust to the external, right? To your relationships on the, outside of you, but it also promotes self-trust. It also totally promotes strong levels of self-respect. Self-respect is so important. It's really, really important. I can't put enough emphasis, probably don't need to, but I'm going to tease this out a bit because listen, if you're walking around with low levels of self-respect, that's affecting your confidence, and that is directly affecting, how the actions that you're taking, the commitments that you're holding yourself to in your life, and ultimately, the reality that you're building, right? You're not going to bet on yourself. You're going to play small. You're going to hesitate. You're going to likely have really shitty boundaries. So you might be getting overstepped by individuals. And it's just a mess, right? Self-respect supports self-esteem, self-confidence. It lives in self-love. So there's a lot of self-action here that all really points back to integrity. And that's why it's such a core value of mine personally and so worthy of, creating this episode around, because I want, no matter where your integrity levels are or wherever integrity is on your radar, in your psychology, in your self-development, I think it's a really, really important subject and attribute for you, for all of us to continually make sure that we have, strong levels of and that we are living up to, right? Let me bring you into a fun story. Wasn't so fun in the moment, but I think it'll be fun to share, and that really illustrates, the importance of integrity and how it can play out, when it is strong and active in your life. There was a scheduling issue recently with, my podcast studio, and basically, and that was on my end, on my team's end, right? And it unfortunately, put my studio, my producer, in a position where, I came in ready to go with a guest too, on Zoom, and it wasn't on his calendar, and he was in the middle of something. This was a fucking problem. In 30 minutes, I was going to have to talk, with the guest on Zoom. And, my kick-ass producer, Scott, you're the man, was in the middle of something. And all of a sudden I walk in and it's like, hey, we have a show. And it was a holy shit moment, And so it's so amazing, these situations. First of all, I think it's so fair to say that, he could have absolutely said, I can't do it. I can't. Like, I'm literally, in the middle of another show. He had something going on. He didn't do that though. He didn't do that. And, listen, he's an incredible human being. And, we've established a really wonderful, working partnership relationship. And so I know that, not only does he care just because of who he is and his integrity levels, but I know that I was in a situation, so he was going to try and come through for me, which I'm so deeply grateful for. And in 20 minutes, he got, my setup ready and had to pull a lot. Like, it was possibly not going to work out. Let's put it that way, because there was a lot going on, just to simplify this, to move us through the story. But it wasn't an easy, like, oh, let's just set this up. Like, there was a lot that actually had to happen. Meanwhile, the clock is ticking. I know my guest is getting ready, and it was just a real moment. Now, I will say this, like in these kind of moments, these moments are actually very special for me because they can be very chaotic, but these are the moments where I step into my highest self, my future self. And composure and equanimity is very important to me, but I'll save that for another solosode. Scott just, hustled and basically, did whatever he could do to get us set up and get us ready. And I stayed calm, cool, collected, and just did what I needed to do to stay in the zone so that if it was to all work out, I'm ready to handle business on the podcast. We were right on time. He worked it out. It was actually incredible. And and then my guest had to cancel last minute. So that's a funny end to the story. But here's the big takeaway that relates to this episode. You guys, again, he had every right to say, I'm so sorry, Rox, but I can't right now, He didn't do that though. He didn't do that. And again, I know that, part of that is because he genuinely does care. We have a great relationship, but knowing him and just witnessing how his work ethic at all times, like how the standards that he holds himself to, this is a full-time fucking operation of integrity. And you guys, that means so much. Not only did that mean so much to me, and I'll never forget that, and that, it carries far with me, but also, I know for him personally, he can also look back and go, I could have totally said no, but he, was able to make it happen. And at the end, it's like, you look back at that moment and you're like, I fucking, I kicked ass in that moment. That was a challenge, a big challenge, but I rose to it. Why? Yes, because you care, but also in that caring piece that I'm really wanting to put emphasis on is integrity. It's integrity. So that was just a really, that's a real life story to share with you, but to dive back into the layers of integrity and how this is really important. What I want to share for you is just, let's move into the self-accountability part here, right? Because I had mentioned that this was an error on my end, my team. In fact, so I live by this kind of philosophy that everything is my fault, right? Even if somebody does me wrong, which doesn't mean that I can't be, victimized in a situation. I don't become a victim of the situation. For me, I always want to figure out how to prevent it from moving forward, whether that's something internally with me or if it's something in my systems, my business. But for me, the only way I'm going to actually be able to do that and to do it with effectiveness is to own the situation, self-accountability. Self-accountability is a huge part of integrity, right? Because I could have easily been like, hey, to my team, you guys, there was a mistake in the schedule and this created a big, issue. I didn't do that. I'm not even interested in that. I'm only interested in realizing that somewhere in the system, there was an error, and moving forward, how do we prevent that from happening, right? Self-accountability. It's huge. And that, to me, there's a big discrepancy there in a lot of individuals, unfortunately, because look, it doesn't feel good to be in that moment and have to take ownership of shit that doesn't, mistakes and things that go wrong. But it is the most empowering thing that you can do because it keeps you, number one, in the creative driver's seat of your life, right? Nobody's creating your life for you. You're making this shit happen. And it allows you to learn, to collect the information that you need to better yourself, to better your systems, to better anything that is contributing to the issue that took place, And to me, that's priceless because I always want to be getting better. I only want my business to become more error-proof, more, just strong and all my systems to be fucking rock star solid, And the only way that I'm going to ever allow myself to continue to evolve in this manner and anything that has to do with my life is that integrity piece. It's that self-accountability and ownership. So, here's an invitation right now with all love and compassion to just check in with yourself. Are you holding yourself accountable? Are you standing in ownership with integrity, in every area of your life, really? And if you're not, then ask yourself why. I say do it in your journal. Always do it in your journal. It's a space where you can just be safe, to be honest with yourself and to dig, and not judge yourself. Be the student of self. I'm always saying it, and I'm going to forever be saying it, because if your goal is to increase your levels of integrity, and I think it should be because it's going to powerfully affect your life in the most incredible of ways, then you got to get to that fucking piece of truth right there of why would you not hold yourself accountable? Why would you not stand in ownership? Standing in ownership, self-accountability is standing in ownership of the actions and decisions, of your life, and the experiences that you are involved in. Again, it doesn't mean that, if you're in a situation where somebody truly did you wrong. I've certainly had that, I've years ago in my love life, like that guy did me wrong, but I still looked at myself and made it less about him and just invited myself to look inward and go, what the fuck? Like, what's happening here, Rox? Like, how did we let that happen, And I'm telling you right now, that has contributed to all of my growth. When you think about self-love, self-connection, integrity, self-ownership, self-trust, it's all contributing back to that. So, if you are going to actually take a moment to, evaluate yourself in these areas, do it with love, do it with compassion, and do it with, you being the student of you. That's how you're going to get the most out of it. Let's go back to my vacuum story really quick. So, look, if you don't move the furniture, no judgment. It doesn't mean that you don't have integrity. I just want to say that. This is my personal shit. Let me give you another example, actually. Training. Oh, this is a good one. And this is also a very universal one. Training. Do you say that, you did your 10 reps, but really you did 8? Or are you the kind of person that, like me, if I forget my count, I'm going to make sure I did more because I don't want to cheat myself. No cheap shortcuts. Rule number fucking 1 with integrity. Well, maybe not 1, but it's right there next to lining your words and actions lining up. The point is, it's important. No cheap shortcuts, you guys. Those cheap shortcuts. Now, look, when I'm saying cheap shortcuts, I mean cheap shortcuts. I'm not talking about, can we find ways to do things smarter? That's not what I'm talking about. Probably didn't need to say it because I know you guys are all smart. But I'm just saying it's like the cheap shortcuts, Don't cheat yourself out of your own reps that are doing you a service, And here's the most important piece. I've said this several times, but it's so perfect to insert here. You've probably heard, or seen on Instagram, you are the main character of your story. You are, the director of your life, right? Like all of that stuff. And 100%, you're the author, you're the director, you're the main character, you're the producer. You're also the fucking audience. And that's the piece that I want to tease out right now because it is so important to really think about and to harness yourself into. You have to realize whether you are conscious of it or not, you are always watching yourself, always. And if you're not conscious of it, or in the moments where you're not conscious of it, understand that there's still a message being sent to you in your subconscious about you, right? So your actions, you always have a witness going on, and that witness is you. And for me, that means a lot to me. I don't want to see myself taking any cheap shortcuts. I don't want to see myself, in the gym cheating myself out of fucking reps. I don't want to do any of that. I don't do any of that. Why? Integrity. Because it fucking matters. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And I'm going to do it with my best. whatever my best is in that moment, right? And that best is always going to look different, but I'm not going to lie to myself. I'm not going to cheat myself. That's a slippery slope. It's very insidious. You start doing it there, you're going to start doing it over here and over here and over here. Very messy life. We don't want that, right? We want a clean operation. We want a powerful operation. We want a potent and effective, beautifully creative operation. Integrity helps you do that, right? So reason number fucking million, even though I haven't gone through a million, to operate with integrity, and if you feel like your integrity levels right now are cruising at a low level, well, hopefully this episode is going to help, fire you up to do what is necessary to, fortify your integrity. So hopefully some of my fun stories and just these thought seeds around integrity and the importance of it and, the what and the how it affects you in your life is inspiration and motivation for you to really think deeper about the value, this attribute that is integrity, and really investigate yourself and your life and ask yourself, not from judgment, preferably in your journal, where are you really holding yourself high in integrity and where are you not? And in those areas that you discover you may not be graceful, apply self-compassion, and just ask yourself why. What are the reasons why? There could be something very deep-seated within you that is preventing you from really holding yourself, in the strong state of integrity in that particular region of your life. And that's just information. But it's information that's going to empower you because it gives you the opportunity to pivot that, to break through that, to make a difference, to shift, to transmute, whatever is there that you need to, shift at, from. So yeah, this is a really, when this situation happened with the podcast and all that the other day, it was the inspiration. It's one of my favorite core values. And I knew at some point I'm going to create a Solosode around it, but the other day, it just basically brought it to my heart to say, like, now's the perfect time. And why I think that this is so important right now is because, we're still in the start of 2023. I know you guys are, in the midst of, goal pursuit, right? Achieving your goals. And integrity is going to make a massive difference in you achieving your goals or not, right? Because you got to show up every day. You have to have focus. You have to have discipline. You need to execute powerfully. You can't take any cheap shortcuts, whatever your goal is. I don't even need to know what your goal is to know that it doesn't even matter what the fucking goal is. If integrity isn't intact in your pursuit, it's going to be hard to get there. So I want you all to win. I want you all to crush your goals. I want you to feel your best. That's another thing. I'll end it on that note. Operating with integrity just feels really fucking good. You're again, the definition, you're in a state of wholeness. You trust yourself, you respect yourself, you love yourself. Your word means something. When your word means something to you, guess what else means something to you? You mean something to you. Again, you're witnessing yourself. You're not judging, you're just watching yourself. And when you can watch yourself and see how you show up, like my incredible producer the other day, he can circle back to that moment and go, fuck, I showed up. I didn't even have to, but I did. And that's got to feel good for him. It certainly feels good for me and my team. Love you, Scott. So if this episode put some fire in your heart, did something for you, please do me a favor. If you're watching this on YouTube, put it in the comments. What's your greatest takeaway? If it's, something that you're listening to on Apple or Spotify or wherever you're taking this in and you want to communicate with me, DM me on Instagram. Roxy Look, my personal account, is the best place for that. But there's also Black Belt Beauty. Handles are in the show notes. And last but not least, if you have not given this podcast a 5-star rating and review, it would mean the world for me and my team if you were to take just a quick moment. There's a little link in the show notes for you to do that. You guys, Thank you so much. I hope you're feeling so powerful and so charged, at this stage of 2023. And I know that it's only going to continue to ramp up. And I'm here to support you to do that, for you to kick fucking ass. All right. I will see you in the next one. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode, you guys. If you loved it, please share it on your social. Throw it up on your Instagram stories and tag me. I'm at Black Belt Beauty. I am also at Roxy Look, RoxyLook. I love connecting with you guys. This is a conversation that I want to just continue growing with you guys. So if you feel inspired to hit me up, do so in that space. I always enjoy hearing from you. If you'd like to support this podcast, you can do so by rating it and reviewing it via iTunes. It's such supportive help, you guys. It really helps the visibility of this podcast. So I appreciate and thank you in advance for doing that. And on that note, you guys, I'm signing off with all my love and always looking forward to catching you on the next.